Lesson 1. The Train to London. Hello, my name is Ariel. I am a student of English. This is my story. I want to tell you everything. It all began on a train to London. It was summer. The sun was soft. The wind was warm. I sat near the window. My heart was beating fast. I was not just going to London. I was going to a new life. Next to me, a man slept. In front of me, two ladies talked. One of them looked at me. I looked away. I didn't want to talk. I was too nervous. The train moved fast. Trees ran past the window. My hand held a small bag. Inside it, I had one photo, one notebook, and one letter. A letter from my teacher. The teacher's name was Mr. Lee. He taught me English in my village. He said to me, "Go to London. Learn more. Speak more. One day, you will speak like a native." But I was afraid. My English was not good. I made mistakes. I often forgot words. I translated in my head. I spoke slow. Still, I listened. I read. I practiced. Every day, I wanted to change. I wanted to speak English with confidence. Suddenly, the train stopped. Not at a station, in the middle of nowhere. People looked out. Someone whispered, "What happened?" The lights turned off. For 1 minute, there was silence. Then the lights came back. The train started again. But something had changed. I looked around. The man next to me was gone. I didn't see him leave. His bag was still there, but he was not. I felt cold. Something was wrong. I looked under the seat. Nothing. I asked the ladies, "Did you see him?" They shook their heads. I picked up his bag. It was heavy. I opened it. Inside I saw a book. A very old book. It had no title. Just a symbol on the cover. A red rose. I touched the cover. At that moment, the train lights blinked again. The train shook. I closed the bag fast. My heart beat faster. Who was that man? Why did he leave his bag? What was the book? I did not know. But I felt this was only the beginning. I looked out again. A sign passed by. It said, "Welcome to London." I held my bag, and the stranger's bag. I took a deep breath. I whispered, "Let's begin." To the viewers, do you think Ariel should open the book again? Who do you think the man was? Tell us in the comments. And don't forget to follow this journey. This is just the beginning. Lesson 2. A Strange Welcome. The train stopped at the London station. People got up. I stood too. I had my own bag in one hand. In the other, I held the stranger's bag. My heart was still beating fast. I looked around to find him again, but he was not there. It was strange. No one else seemed to notice he was missing. I walked slowly through the station. There were so many people. They walked fast. They looked busy. I felt small. I felt lost. But I had a plan. I had an address. It was written in my notebook. My teacher gave it to me. It was the place where I would stay. It was far from the station, so I needed to take the bus. I walked out of the station and looked for the bus stop. London was big, bigger than I had imagined. The buildings were tall, the roads were wide, the cars moved fast. People did not smile. They all looked serious. I asked a man, "Excuse me, where is this bus?" He looked at me, then looked away. He did not answer. Maybe he did not understand me. Maybe I said something wrong. I felt nervous again. I checked the paper again and found the bus number. I saw it coming. I raised my hand. The bus stopped. I got in. I showed the address to the driver. He nodded. That small nod felt big. It was like a, "Yes, you are going the right way." I sat near the window. I looked outside. The city was beautiful, but my eyes kept looking at the bag. The stranger's bag. I had questions. Why did he leave? What was in the book? Should I open it again? I waited. I didn't open it. Not yet. The bus moved slowly through the streets. After some time, the driver called out my stop. I got down and looked at the buildings around me. I was in a quiet street. There were small houses. One of them had a red door. It matched the number in my notebook. I knocked. An old woman opened the door. She had white hair and kind eyes. She smiled and said, "You must be Ariel." I nodded. "Come in," she said. Her house was small but warm. She gave me tea. She asked about my journey. I told her a little, not everything, not about the man, not about the bag. I didn't know what to say. She showed me my room. It was clean. There was a desk and a small bed. I placed my bag on the floor. I looked at the other bag. It looked older now. I sat on the bed. I touched the red rose symbol again. Nothing happened. But I felt something. Something deep. Something strange. I opened the book again. This time, there was a note inside. It was written in red ink. One line only. "You were chosen." I closed the book fast. I looked around. My hands were shaking. What did it mean? Who chose me? For what? I didn't know. But I knew something for sure. This was no normal book, and London was no normal city. My teacher said, "You will speak English well." But he didn't say I would face this. I lay down on the bed. I looked at the ceiling. My mind was full. My heart was heavy. But my story had just begun. Do you think Ariel should keep the book or throw it away? What would you do? Let me know in the comments. Lesson 3. The first night. The night was cold. I could not sleep. I turned from side to side. My eyes looked at the bag again and again. I wanted to forget it, but I could not. The note was still in my hand. You were chosen. Chosen for what? I had no idea. The room was quiet, but inside me, there was noise. Thoughts moved fast. Who was that man? Where did he go? Why did he leave this book with me? I was just a simple boy, a student. I came to London to learn English, not to find mystery. I looked out the window. The street was dark. One lamp flickered outside. It blinked like a weak star. I whispered to myself, "What is happening?" Suddenly, I heard a knock, a soft knock, not at the front door, at my room door. I sat up quickly. My heart jumped. I stood and walked slowly. I opened the door. No one was there. The hallway was empty. The light was dim, but I saw something on the floor. A small card. It had my name on it. Ariel. I picked it up. My hands were cold. I opened the card. Inside, only one line again. Don't trust her. My breath stopped. Don't trust who? The old lady? The one who smiled at me? The one who gave me tea? I walked back into my room and locked the door. I sat on the bed and stared at the two things, the book and the card. I did not know what to believe. Was someone watching me? Was someone trying to help me or trick me? I looked at my phone. No messages, no calls. I wanted to talk to my teacher, but he was far away. I was alone, alone in a new city, alone with a strange book. And now, a warning. I needed to think. I needed to speak clearly. So I said out loud, "What should I do now?" I listened to my voice. I sounded scared, but also stronger. Speaking helped me feel better. Then, I took out my notebook. I started writing. I wrote in English. Today, I came to London. I found a book. I don't know who left it, but it feels powerful. I am scared, but I want to know more. My English was not perfect, but I wrote without stopping. My words were simple, but they were mine. Writing helped me think, it helped me remember, and it helped me practice. I was not just writing a story, I was living it. Later, I placed the book under my pillow. I kept the card inside my notebook. I turned off the light and closed my eyes. I tried to sleep, but before sleep came, I made a promise to myself. I will find out the truth. I will speak better English. I will not give up. Lesson 4. The Morning Clue. I woke up early. The sky was gray. My head was heavy. I didn't sleep much. I sat up and touched the pillow. The book was still there. I looked around the room. Everything looked normal, but I didn't feel normal. My mind still repeated the words from last night. You were chosen. Don't trust her. I stood up, washed my face, and changed my clothes. I opened the door slowly. The house was quiet. I walked to the kitchen. The old woman was there. She smiled. "Good morning, Ariel," she said. Her voice was soft. Her hands made tea. I smiled back, but inside, I felt nervous. Was she the one I should not trust? Or was someone lying to me? I sat down. She gave me a cup. "Did you sleep well?" she asked. I nodded. "Yes, thank you," I lied. I took a small sip. The tea was warm, but my heart was cold. She looked at me again. "You remind me of someone," she said. "He stayed here years ago. He was also learning English. He also had a secret." I froze. I tried to smile. "What secret?" I asked. She laughed a little. I don't know. He never told me. One day he just left. He didn't come back. I looked at my cup. I didn't know what to say. Was she warning me or just talking? I thanked her for the tea and walked out. I needed air. I needed to think. Outside, the street was still. No cars, no people. I walked slowly. I passed a bookshop. Its window was full of old books. One book had a red rose on it. I stopped. I looked closer. The symbol was the Ariel. Ariella as the book in the bag. I pushed the door. A bell rang. The shop smelled of paper and dust. A man stood behind the counter. He looked old and wise. He wore glasses. I walked to him and said, "Hello, I saw a book in the window with a red rose." He looked at me. His eyes were sharp. "That symbol," he said, "is not just a flower. It is a mark, a message." My heart beat faster. I asked, "What does it mean?" He said, "It means truth and danger." I felt cold again. "Where did you see it?" he asked me. I lied. "In a dream," I said. He looked at me for a moment, then nodded. "Dreams are not always dreams," he said. "Sometimes they are memories." I left the shop quickly. My legs were shaking. I walked back home, holding the bag tighter. I opened my notebook and wrote again. The rose means truth and danger. Someone knows. Someone is watching. I must be careful. I looked out the window. I saw the old woman. She was watering the flowers. She looked up. Our eyes met. She waved at me. I waved back. But now everything had changed. Her smile, her words, her story. They all felt different. I didn't know who to trust, but I knew I had to keep going. I came to London to learn English, but now I was learning more than words. I was learning secrets, and secrets speak loud, even in silence. What do you think the symbol means? Do you think the bookshop man knows more? Comment below and stay with Ariel's story. Lesson 5. The Letter in the Wall. That night I could not stop thinking about the bookshop man. His words stayed in my head. The rose means truth and danger. Why was I chosen? What danger was coming? I needed answers, but I also needed to stay calm. I told myself again and again, you came to London to learn. Focus on that. So I picked up my English book and started reading. I read simple sentences. I spoke them out loud. This is a boy. The boy has a bag. The bag has a book. My voice was slow but clear. I was trying. I was learning. But even as I read, my eyes kept going back to the stranger's book, the one with the rose. It felt alive, as if it was watching me. The next morning I woke up early. The house was quiet. I walked to the small study room next to my bedroom. It was dusty and old. Books sat on the shelf. The window was small, but light came in. I sat at the table and opened my notebook. I wrote in English. I want to speak well. I want to be brave. I want to know the truth. As I wrote, I felt better. My English was simple, but I could feel my words getting stronger. I closed the notebook and stood up. I looked around the room. Something caught my eye. A small crack in the wall near the shelf. It looked like someone had touched it many times. I went closer. I pushed the wall softly. It made a sound, a soft click. Part of the wall opened. My hands were cold. My heart was loud. Behind the wall, there was a small space. Inside it, I found something. A letter. An old letter. The paper was yellow. I opened it with care. It was written in English. Not very hard English. I could understand some of it. It said, "If you found this, then you are part of it now. The book is not just paper. It is a door to the past, a door to truth. But not all truth is safe." I read it again and again. Part of it now. What was it? What door? What truth? My hands shook. I placed the letter in my notebook. I looked at the bookshelf. So many old books. I pulled out one. It was a dictionary. I opened it. On the first page there was a name. Thomas Lee. My teacher's name. My heart stopped for a second. Was this his book? Did he stay in this house too? Did he know all this? Suddenly, things started to make sense. My teacher gave me the address. He told me to come to London. He said, "You will find more than English." I thought it was a joke. Now I knew it was not. I took the stranger's book from under my bed. I opened the first page. This time, new words were there. Words I had not seen before. They said, "You open the path. Keep walking, but be careful who walks with you." I closed the book fast. I looked at the door. I listened. No one was there. I sat down and wrote more in my notebook. English is a tool, but now it's also a key. I must learn. I must speak. I must find the truth, even if it scares me. Do you think Ariel's teacher knows about the book? What is the secret behind the hidden room? Let us know in the comments, and keep watching the next part of Ariel's journey. Lesson 6. The Hidden Voice. That evening I could not sit still. I walked around my room. I opened the book again, then closed it. I picked up the old letter, read it again, then put it down. My thoughts were loud. My heart was louder. I kept thinking about one thing, the name inside the dictionary, Thomas Lee, my teacher. Did he leave the book for me? Did he live in this house once? Was this all his plan? I wanted to believe he was helping me, but I didn't know for sure. The message in the book said, "Be careful who walks with you." Maybe even my teacher had secrets. Maybe I knew less than I thought. I sat down and tried to relax. I closed my eyes. I breathed slowly. And then I heard it. It was a whisper. Very soft, like wind. But it was not wind. It was a voice. It came from the book. My eyes opened. I looked around. No one was there. I picked up the book. I opened it. This time, the pages were moving by themselves, slowly, as if the book was alive. The voice whispered again, "Learn the words, speak them. The book will open when you are ready." My hand was shaking. I dropped the book. It landed on the floor. The pages stopped moving. The room was quiet again. I waited. Nothing happened. I picked it up again. The rose symbol on the cover looked darker now. It was almost red, like blood. I held the book to my chest. My hands were cold, but my mind was hot with questions. Who was the voice? Why did it want me to learn English? I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the sky was turning blue to black. A car passed slowly. A cat ran across the road. Everything looked normal, but nothing felt normal. I sat at the desk and opened my English textbook. I started reading out loud. I wanted to show the book that I was learning. "This is a girl. The girl has a pen. The pen is blue." I repeated it again. I added more words. I used my own story. "I am Ariel. I have a book. The book speaks. It is not a normal book." Suddenly, one word on the old book started to glow. The word was voice. I touched it. My finger felt warm. The page turned on its own again. A new message appeared. It said, "You passed the first step." I felt proud, but also scared. What was the next step? Would the voice come back? Was it good or bad? I didn't know. I just knew this book wanted me to speak, to read, to understand. I picked up my notebook again and wrote, "Today, the book spoke. A voice told me to learn. I must speak English every day. I think the book listens. I think it is watching me." I closed the notebook. I looked at the door. It was still locked. The house was quiet. The old woman didn't knock. She didn't call me. Maybe she knew something. Maybe she was waiting. I put the book in my bag. I was not going to leave it here. If it was dangerous, I needed to carry it with me. If it was powerful, I needed to protect it. I turned off the light. I lay in bed. My eyes were open. My ears listened for the voice. It didn't come again that night, but I knew it would return. And when it did, I had to be ready, with words, not fear. What do you think the voice wants from Ariel? Will learning English unlock more secrets? Share your ideas in the comments. Lesson 7. The Mark on the Wall. The next morning, I woke up with a strange feeling. I had not seen a dream, but I still felt like something had happened in my sleep. I looked around the room. Everything looked the Arielle. The book was still in my bag. My notebook was on the table. The light from the window was soft. Birds were singing outside, but I didn't feel calm. I stood up and walked to the wall near my bed. I don't know why. Maybe my heart told me. Maybe the book whispered again in my sleep. I looked closely and saw something new. There was a mark on the wall, a small rose shape, just like the one on the book. It was not painted. It was not drawn. It was glowing, very softly, like a firefly. I touched the mark with one finger. It felt warm, like life. I took a step back. My heart was beating fast again. My hands were cold. I looked around the room to make sure I was alone. Then I turned back to the mark. I touched it again, and this time, something strange happened. The wall near the rose mark started to fade. Not break, not fall, fade, like smoke. And behind the smoke, there was a message, just like the one in the book. This time it said, 3 doors, 1 truth, 2 lies. Speak with care. I whispered the words slowly. I did not understand them, not fully, but I knew they were for me. I took a deep breath. I opened my notebook and wrote the words down. I tried to guess what they meant. 3 doors, 1 truth, 2 lies. Was it a puzzle? A warning? A test? Maybe all of them. I knew one thing for sure. This journey was not only about learning English. It was about discovering something hidden, something old, and maybe something dangerous. I sat on the bed and opened the book again. I spoke slowly, clearly. I want to learn. I want to speak. I want to find the truth. As I said the last word, the rose on the cover moved. Just a little, as if it was listening again. I carried the book with me downstairs. The old woman was in the kitchen. She smiled at me like always. But now, her smile looked different. Or maybe I was different. "Good morning, Ariel," she said. "Did you sleep well?" I nodded. "Yes, thank you." My voice was calm, but inside, I was full of fire. I wanted to ask her something. I wanted to ask about the mark, about the hidden space, about the old letter, but I didn't. Not yet. I needed to be sure. I needed more English, more words. So I thanked her for breakfast and went outside. The streets were quiet again. I walked to the small park near the house. I sat on a bench. I took out my notebook. I wrote new sentences. I wrote about the doors, about the lies, about my fear. I am learning English, but I am also learning truth. I am finding things I never knew. The book speaks. The wall shows signs. Someone is watching me, maybe more than one. I said these sentences out loud, slowly, clearly, with feeling. I looked around. No one heard me, but I knew someone was listening, somewhere. I stood up and looked at the trees. The sky above was clean and blue, but I felt like something was coming. A test, a choice, a door. I needed to be ready. I needed to speak, to write, to read, to understand. Because the book was not just helping me learn English. It was asking me to unlock something far greater. And I could feel it. The journey had just begun. What do you think the 3 doors mean? What would you do if you were in Ariel's place? Tell us in the comments. Lesson 8. The room that wasn't there. That night, something strange happened. I was reading my English book. I was writing new sentences in my notebook. The house was quiet. The old woman had gone to sleep early. I was alone in my room. Or that's what I thought. I stood up to get a glass of water. I walked into the hallway. The hallway was always short. There were only 3 doors. One was the kitchen, one was the bathroom, one was my room. But that night, there was a 4th door, a dark wooden door. I stopped and stared. My hands felt cold. My legs felt weak. I had walked down this hallway many times. This door was never there before. I stepped closer. The door had no handle, just a small round mark at the center. It was the Arielle rose shape. I didn't touch it. Not yet. I looked around. Everything else was the Arielle. Arielle wall color, Arielle pictures, Arielle floor. Only this door was new. I whispered, "Am I dreaming?" But I was not. I could feel the cold air. I could hear the clock ticking in the living room. I stood there for a minute. Then I walked back to my room and picked up the book. I held it in both hands and went back to the door. I touched the rose symbol gently. It lit up. A red glow, soft and warm. The door opened by itself, slowly, silently. Inside, there was darkness. I could not see anything. I took a small step forward. Just one, and the light from the hallway followed me. It showed a room with no furniture, no bed, no table, just one mirror on the wall. A big mirror. I walked closer to it. I looked inside. I saw myself, but I also saw something else. Behind my reflection, there was a figure, a shadow. I turned around quickly. No one was there. I looked back into the mirror. The shadow was gone. I started to walk out, but the door closed behind me. I was locked inside. I called out, "Hello?" No answer. I held the book tighter. Then I remembered the voice. It said, "Speak the words." So I did. I spoke slowly. "I am Ariel. I want to learn. I am not afraid." As I finished, the mirror began to shake. Words appeared on the glass. "You have opened the 2nd door. 2 more steps. 1 truth waits." Then the mirror turned black. I turned around, and the door opened again. I ran back to my room. My heart was beating fast. I sat on the bed and wrote everything down. There was a door, a mirror, a shadow, a message, 2 more steps, 1 truth. I closed the notebook and stared at the wall. I was not just learning English now. I was speaking to something. I was answering a call. The book was testing me. And the house, it was alive. I looked at the wall beside my bed. The rose mark was still there. And now I knew. It was watching me too. What do you think the mirror showed Ariel? What is the one truth waiting at the end? Share your thoughts in the comments and stay with the story. Lesson 9. A Note in the Mirror. The next morning, I woke up with tired eyes. I had not slept well. My dreams were dark and strange. I saw the mirror again. I saw the shadow again. But this time the shadow spoke. It said, "You are close." That was all. Just those 3 words. I opened my eyes quickly. My heart was still beating fast. I looked around the room. Everything was still, but something felt different. I stood up and walked to the hallway. The fourth door was gone. It had disappeared like it was never there. Only the 3 doors remained now: kitchen, bathroom, bedroom. I touched the wall where the strange door had been. It was hard and cold. No sign of the rose mark. No glow. Just empty wall. I went back to my room. I opened the book again. Its pages were quiet. No new words. No glowing lines. I whispered, "What now?" The book stayed silent. I placed it on the table and opened my notebook. I started writing. Last night I entered the door. I saw a mirror. I saw a shadow. It told me I am close. But close to what? I kept writing. Even when I didn't know the answers, writing helped. It made my English stronger, and it made my heart stronger too. After writing, I stood near the mirror in my room. It was small, not like the one in the hidden room. But today, there was something on it. A note. A paper note stuck to the corner. I pulled the note slowly. My hands were shaking again. I opened it and read the message. It said, "Go to the garden. Dig under the red flower." That was all. Nothing more. No name, no sign. Just that one line. I walked to the window and looked at the garden. It was quiet. The flowers were still. The wind was soft. The red flower stood in the middle, bright and bold. I took the book and the note with me and went outside. The old woman was not there. Maybe she was sleeping. Maybe she was watching. I didn't know. I just walked to the red flower. I bent down. I touched the ground. It was soft. I used my hands to dig. The dirt was dry, but after some time I found something. A small box, very old, covered in dust and roots. I pulled it out and opened it. Inside was a small key and a photo. The photo showed 3 people. One of them was my teacher, Mr. Lee. He was young in the picture. He stood next to a woman and a man. The woman looked familiar. I looked again. She was the Arielle woman who now owned the house, the woman who gave me tea, the woman I lived with. The third man, I didn't know him. But he looked serious. His eyes were dark. I held the key tightly. I looked at the photo again. Why was my teacher here? What was his connection to her? What door would this key open? I stood up, covered the hole, and walked back to the house. My heart was heavy. My steps were slow. I didn't know who to ask. I didn't know who to trust. But one thing was clear. This journey was much bigger than I had thought. I came to London to learn English, but now I was learning truth. And truth, I was starting to see, could be more dangerous than silence. What do you think the key will open? Why was Ariel's teacher in the photo with the old woman? Tell us in the comments. Lesson 10. The Key That Waited. I sat on my bed and stared at the small key in my hand. It was old and a little rusty, but strong. The photo was next to me. I looked at it again and again. My teacher, the old woman, and a man I didn't know. They all stood together, smiling. But the smile looked strange, like it was hiding something. I tried to remember if Mr. Lee ever spoke about his past. He never did. He always talked about English, about learning, about dreaming big. But now I saw him in this old photo with people from this house, and I didn't know what to feel. I whispered to myself, why didn't he tell me? I opened the drawer next to my bed and placed the photo inside, but I kept the key. I touched the rose mark on the book again. It didn't glow this time. It was quiet, still, as if it was waiting for me to act first. I stood up and walked around my room. I searched for a place that the key might fit. I checked every drawer, every box, every corner, but nothing had a lock. Then I remembered the study room, the old room with books and dust and secrets. I walked there slowly, my fingers tight around the key. The study room was quiet. The light from the small window fell on the floor. I looked at the bookshelf again. I pulled books. I tapped on wood. I looked behind the curtains. And then I saw it. A small square on the floor. It was covered by a carpet. I moved the carpet away. The square had a lock, a hidden trap door. My heart jumped. My breath stopped for a moment. I bent down and put the key inside the lock. It fit perfectly. I turned the key. The lock clicked open. I pulled the door up. A smell came out. Not bad, but old. Like forgotten paper and wood. I looked down. There were steps, narrow, dusty steps going into the dark. I stood there for a moment, then I picked up the book. I picked up a small flashlight from the table. I started to walk down. 1 step, 2 steps, 3. My legs were shaking, but I kept going. At the bottom, there was a small room, like a cellar, cold, silent. A table was in the middle, and on the table, there was a letter. The letter had my name on it. Ariel. My hands touched it slowly. I opened it. The writing was clear. It said, "If you are reading this, you have done well. You are learning. You are listening. You are ready. But not all truths are easy. You must decide. Will you keep going?" I looked around the small room. There were no windows, only that one letter. And a mirror. A mirror again. It stood at the back of the room. I walked to it. My reflection looked back at me. But again, behind me, something moved. I turned around. Nothing. I looked again. The mirror now had words. Your story is not only yours. I stepped back. My heart was loud. My hands were cold. I whispered, "What do you mean?" But there was no answer. Only silence. I walked back up the stairs. I locked the trap door again. I sat on the floor, holding the book and the letter. My mind was full. My English was growing. But so were the secrets. I came to London to study, to grow, to speak better. But now, I had found something bigger, something hidden, something waiting. What do you think the message in the mirror means? Is Ariel ready for the truth? Comment your thoughts. Lesson 11. The Voice Returns. I sat in my room with the letter on the table. The words kept echoing in my head. Your story is not only yours. What did it mean? Was someone else part of this? Was my teacher still watching me? Was the old woman hiding more than she showed? I didn't know, but I could feel something new, a pull, a strong feeling inside me. It was not fear, it was not excitement, it was something in between, like standing at the edge of a deep river, not knowing how to swim, but still wanting to jump in. I opened my notebook and began writing again. I found a door, a letter, a mirror. I am not alone. Someone else is part of my story. As I finished writing, the book on my bed moved, just a little. I stared at it. My hands stopped. My body froze. The book opened by itself. A soft light came from the pages. I walked toward it. I touched it. And then I heard it again. The voice. Software. Calm, but not human. You are learning well, it said. You are walking the right path, but your time is short. My lips were dry. My heart was fast. I asked, "What is the truth?" The voice answered, "The truth is hidden in the names. Find the third name." The book closed. The light was gone. The voice disappeared. I sat back down. What names? I thought hard. Then I remembered. The photo, 3 people, my teacher, the old woman, the man with dark eyes. I knew 2 names. Mr. Lee. Miss Clara, that was the old woman's name. But the third name, the man, I didn't know it. I opened the drawer and took out the photo. I looked at the man again. His eyes were deep, cold. But there was something familiar about his face. I had seen him before, maybe not in real life, maybe in dreams, or maybe in the mirror. I walked to the mirror in my room. I stared into it for a long time. Then I whispered the question, "Who is he?" The mirror stayed quiet. But then, very slowly, letters began to appear on the glass. Faint, software, like smoke. It wrote, Elias. I repeated it out loud. Elias. The name felt heavy in my mouth, like it carried pain, like it had power. I wrote the name down in my notebook. Now I had 3 names: Thomas Lee, Clara, Elias. I didn't know how they were connected, but the book did, and I knew the book would show me more if I kept going. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept the book close. I wrote all the new words I had learned. I read my sentences out loud. My teacher had a secret. The house has doors, the book speaks, the mirror shows, and someone named Elias is part of it. Every word I spoke made my English stronger, but more than that, it made me stronger. I was not just learning a language now. I was learning courage. I was learning truth. And truth was no longer hiding from me. It was walking toward me, step by step, waiting to be seen. Who do you think Elias is? What secret connects him to Ariel's teacher and Clara? Share your guess in the comments. Lesson 12. The Man in the Rain. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of rain. It was soft at first, like a whisper. Then it grew louder, like the sky was crying. I looked out of the window. The whole street was wet. The trees moved gently. The wind was cold. I stayed by the window for a while, just watching. My thoughts were heavy. Elias. That was the name the mirror had given me. But who was he? And why did his name feel so strong, so dark? I opened my notebook and wrote, "Rain is falling." The book is quiet, but the truth is not far. I feel it. I feel him. I closed the notebook and picked up the book. It was still. No glow, no voice, just silence. I put it in my bag and stepped out of the room. Downstairs, Clara was sitting near the fire. She was drinking tea. She looked up and smiled. I smiled back. But my smile was small. She looked at me with careful eyes. "Going out in the rain, Ariel?" she asked. I nodded. "Just for a walk," I said. "Take this," she said, handing me an old umbrella. I took it. I said thank you. I opened the door and stepped outside. The air was fresh and cold. The road was quiet. I walked slowly, my shoes wet from puddles. Every sound felt louder in the rain. I turned the corner and walked toward the park. And that's when I saw him. A man stood near the trees, alone, still. He wore a long black coat and a dark hat. His head was down. He did not move. I stopped walking. My eyes stayed on him. My hands held the umbrella tightly. Something about him felt strange, too quiet, too still. I took one small step closer. The man looked up. His eyes met mine. My heart stopped. It was the Ariely face from the photo. Elias. I didn't need to ask. I just knew. It was him. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He just stared. And then, slowly, he turned and walked into the trees. I wanted to follow, but my feet did not move. I stood there frozen in the rain. The trees behind him swayed. The wind whispered. I took one deep breath and stepped forward. The moment I did, something happened. A voice, not from the book, not from the mirror, from behind me. "Don't go," it said. I turned around. No one was there. The street was empty, but the voice stayed in my head. I looked back at the trees. Elias was gone, like he had never been there. I stood alone, wet and confused, my heart still beating too fast. I walked back home slowly. Every step felt heavy. When I entered, Clara was still sitting near the fire. She looked up again. "Did you see something?" she asked. I shook my head. "Just trees," I said. I walked up to my room and closed the door. I took out my notebook and wrote everything down. I saw him. Elias. He looked at me. He said nothing, but his eyes spoke. The book is waiting. I am waiting. The next step is near. I didn't know where this story was taking me, but I knew this. London was no longer just a city. It was a door, and I had just stepped through. Was Elias trying to warn Ariel or lead him somewhere? Why did Clara ask that strange question? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Lesson 13. The Locked Drawer. The rain stopped in the middle of the night. I sat by the window, looking out. The street was wet and empty. I could still see the trees where Elias had stood. His eyes were still in my mind. He did not speak, but I felt like he had told me something without words. Something important. I didn't understand it yet, but I knew I had to keep moving forward. The next morning I woke up tired. I had not slept much. I went downstairs. Clara was not in the kitchen. That was strange. She always sat near the fire in the morning. I walked slowly through the hallway. Everything was quiet, too quiet. I entered the study room. I had not gone back there since I found the trap door. The room was still dusty. Light came through the small window. I stood there for a moment. Then I saw something new. The desk had a drawer. I had checked it before, but now I saw it had a keyhole. A small one. My hand reached into my bag. I pulled out the old key, the one I found under the red flower. I placed it in the drawer. It fit. My hand shook. I turned the key. The lock clicked open. Inside the drawer was another letter. This one had no name, but the handwriting looked the Arielle as the letter I had found before. I opened it slowly. The words were short, simple. The third mirror shows the memory, but only when spoken aloud. I read it twice, then again. What did it mean? Another mirror? I looked around the room. There was no mirror here, but I remembered the mirror in Clara's hallway, the one near the stairs. Maybe that was the one. Maybe it had been waiting all this time. I took the letter and walked back to my room. I sat at the desk and wrote everything I had learned. I saw Elias. He disappeared. I found a drawer. I found a letter. There is a third mirror. It holds a memory, but only when spoken aloud. I looked at my book. It was still on the table. I opened it. No light, no voice, just quiet pages. I whispered, "What do I need to say?" I didn't know, but I knew I had to try. That evening, when Clara went outside to water the plants, I walked to the mirror in the hallway. I stood in front of it. I looked into my own eyes. My hand touched the glass. Cold. Still. Then I remembered the letter's words. Spoken aloud. So I spoke. I said the three names: Thomas, Clara, Elias. For a second, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the mirror turned gray. A picture formed, not a reflection, a memory. I saw a room, this house, long ago. My teacher stood near a table. Clara sat beside him. Elias stood at the window. They were talking, but I couldn't hear their words. Then Elias turned. He looked at me through the mirror, like he knew I was watching. I stepped back. The picture faded. The mirror returned to normal. But one thing had changed. In the corner of the glass, one word was written: basement. I stared at it. I whispered it. Basement. I ran to my room and wrote it in my notebook. My hands were shaking. The book stayed quiet. But now I had a new clue. One more place to go. One more door to open. What do you think is hidden in the basement? Why are the mirrors showing the past? Tell us in the comments. Lesson 14. The basement door. I sat in my room for a long time. My notebook was open. The word basement was written in the middle of the page. I stared at it again and again. I had never seen a basement in this house. Clara never spoke about one. I had never seen stairs going down. But the mirror showed that word for a reason. It wanted me to find something. A truth. A memory. A secret. My hands were cold. My heart beat like a drum. I opened my bag and placed the book inside. I picked up the old key, just in case I needed it again. Then I left my room. The house was quiet. Clara was in the kitchen. I saw her from the hallway. She was chopping something. She didn't see me. I turned and walked to the back of the house. I opened every door. I checked every corner. I knocked on the walls. I tapped the floor. Then, behind the old bookshelf in the hallway, I saw a line in the wood. A small line, like a door. I pushed the shelf. It moved a little. I pushed harder. The shelf slid to the side. Behind it, there was a narrow wooden door. No handle, just another rose mark. I placed my hand on the rose. It glowed. The door clicked. I pulled it open. A smell of dust and earth came out. There were stairs. They led down into the dark. I turned on the small flashlight in my pocket. I looked back once. The hallway was empty. Clara was still in the kitchen. I stepped down slowly. Each stair creaked. The air grew colder. I held the flashlight with one hand and the wall with the other. The basement was not far, but it felt deep. When I reached the bottom, I saw it. The basement was small. The walls were made of stone. There was an old table, a broken chair, and shelves with papers and boxes. In the center of the room, there was a painting. It stood on the floor, covered by a cloth. I walked toward it. My heart was loud now. I pulled the cloth away. It was a painting of 3 people: Thomas, Clara, Elias. They stood near this very house. But something was strange. In the corner of the painting, there was a small child. His face looked like mine. I stepped back. I looked again. The child was me. I felt cold all over. I touched my face. I touched the painting. It was real. I was in the painting. But how? Why? I didn't remember them. I didn't remember this place. Then I saw a small box under the painting. I opened it. Inside was a piece of paper. On it, only one line. You were here once, before the words left you. I sat on the floor. My legs could not hold me. My whole life, I thought I came to London for the first time. But maybe I had been here before. Maybe this house, this mystery, this book, they were all part of my past. I looked around again. The room was quiet. The dust floated in the light. I heard a sound upstairs, a slow creak, then footsteps. Clara. She was walking. Maybe she knew I was down here. Maybe she had known everything from the start. I took the photo, the paper, and the book. I turned off the light and started to climb back up, step by step, slowly, carefully, because now I knew I was not just learning English. I was remembering something I had once forgotten, something the book had come to wake inside me. Was Ariel really in London before? What happened to his past? Why did Clara keep it hidden? Let us know your thoughts. Lesson 15. A Truth Once Forgotten. I came back into my room and locked the door. My hands were shaking, my eyes were wide. I placed the painting and the paper on the bed. I sat down beside them, holding my head in my hands. The child in the painting looked like me. The eyes, the hair, the face. It was me. But I had no memory of being here before. No memory of this house. No memory of Clara, Thomas, or Elias from childhood. How could I forget something so big? And then the words on the paper repeated in my mind. You were here once, before the words left you. What did that mean? Did I forget more than just people? Did I forget a whole life? I opened the book again. Its pages were quiet. No voice came, no glow, just simple, silent paper. But somehow I knew it was still alive, still watching, still waiting. I whispered to it. What happened to me? Nothing changed. I closed the book and picked up the letter. I read it again. I read it out loud. You were here once, before the words left you. I thought carefully about those words. I remembered something my teacher once said. Sometimes the mind protects the heart. It hides pain under silence. Maybe I had lived here before. Maybe something happened. Something too heavy for a child to carry. So I forgot. I looked at the book again and said, help me remember. The pages moved by themselves. Just one page. A new message appeared. To remember, you must return to the voice. I didn't know what that meant, but I remembered the voice, the soft one from the book, the one that spoke in the quiet. I stood up and turned off the light. The room went dark. I sat on the floor and closed my eyes. I breathed slowly. I waited, and then I heard it. The voice came again. It was gentle, like wind through leaves. You were lost, but not alone. We waited. Now you are ready. I opened my eyes. A soft light came from the book. One word appeared in glowing letters. Remember. I stood up. I opened my notebook and began to write. I didn't stop to think. I didn't stop to check grammar. I just wrote. My name is Ariel. I was here before. I played in this house. I knew Clara. I knew Elias. But something happened. Something bad. I stopped speaking. I stopped learning. I forgot English. I forgot myself. But now I remember. I remember the voice. I remember the fear, but I'm not afraid anymore. My hand shook as I finished writing. I stood in front of the mirror again. This time I did not wait for it to speak. I looked at myself and said, I remember. The mirror lit up. A soft, red light. A new picture appeared. I saw a boy, small and scared, running through the house. A door slammed. A woman cried. A man stood near the window. It was Elias. Then the picture faded. I touched the glass. It was warm. I said, "Show me more." But the mirror went dark. Not now. Not yet. I sat back on my bed. My heart felt full, heavy, but full. I knew now that this journey was more than learning English. It was healing something broken. I came to London for school, for practice, for change. But what I found was deeper. The words I lost were coming back. And with them, the truth. My truth. Bit by bit. What do you think happened in Ariel's past? Is he ready to face the full truth? Share your thoughts in the comments. Lesson 16. The silence between us. The next morning, I didn't leave my room. I didn't speak to Clara. I didn't go for a walk. I just sat on my bed with the book on my lap. I looked at the painting again. The child in it, the boy who looked like me, was no longer a mystery. He was me. And the more I stared at his face, the more I felt something inside waking up. Not words, not memories, just feelings. Fear, sadness, something painful that had no shape. I opened my notebook and wrote down one line. The words left me, but the pain stayed. Then I closed the notebook and sat in silence for a long time. After some time, I heard Clara's voice from outside my door. "Ariel," she said softly, "would you like some tea?" I didn't answer. I didn't move. She waited a few seconds, then walked away. Her voice was calm, like always, but it felt different now. I didn't know if she had lied to me or protected me. Maybe both. I stood up and looked at the mirror. I placed my hand on the glass. Nothing happened. No light, no pictures, just my reflection. I whispered to it, "What did I forget? Why did I forget?" Still no answer. The silence filled the room like thick smoke. But even in that silence, I felt something. The truth was closer now. I could feel it breathing. I opened the book again. This time, there was no voice, but there was a message written in red ink. One line. "It's time to speak to her." I closed the book and took a deep breath. I walked to the door. My hand touched the knob, but I didn't turn it right away. My heart was loud. My body was heavy. I whispered, "Please don't lie to me again." Then I opened the door and walked downstairs. Clara was sitting in the Ariel chair near the fire. She looked up. Her eyes met mine. She didn't smile. She just waited. I sat on the chair across from her. I placed the book on the table between us. "Do you know who I am?" I asked. My voice was low but steady. She nodded slowly. Yes, Ariel, I know. My hands turned cold. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. She looked down. Her voice was soft. Because you were too small, too hurt. You couldn't carry it back then. I felt anger in my chest, but also understanding. She wasn't just hiding. She was trying to protect something broken. Was this my home? I asked. She nodded. You lived here until you were 6. You stopped speaking after the night Elias left. Everything changed after that. My throat felt tight. And Thomas? I asked. He was your uncle, she said. He left too. He took the book with him. He said it would help you one day. I looked at the book again. I touched the cover. The rose symbol felt warmer than before. I asked, why did Elias leave? Clara looked at the fire. Her face looked older now, tired. He did something he could not undo, she said. He was not evil, but he was lost. And his silence hurt you more than words ever could. I didn't ask more. I didn't need to. I could feel the pieces moving inside me, slowly fitting together. I stood up. I remember something, I said. One night, I cried in the basement. Someone called my name, but I didn't answer. Clara nodded. That was the night you forgot. I walked back to my room. My legs were weak. My eyes burned. I sat at my desk and wrote again. The past is not gone. It is hiding, but I am not hiding anymore. I looked at the book. Its cover glowed softly, like it heard me, like it knew I was ready. I closed my eyes. The silence between us, me, Clara, the book, was no longer empty. It was full of truth. Is Ariel strong enough now to face Elias again? Has he fully unlocked his past? Tell us what you think. Lesson 17. The Last Memory. That night, I did not sleep. I kept the book close to me. I held it like a part of me, like a lost piece I had finally found. The room was dark. The only light came from the moon outside. I watched it for hours. My eyes stayed open, but my thoughts were somewhere else. I thought about the basement. I thought about Elias. I thought about the child I used to be. I had found so many clues. I had spoken so many simple words. But the biggest question still waited. What really happened all those years ago? Why did the words leave me? Why did silence choose me? I knew the answer was near. I could feel it breathing behind the walls. In the middle of the night, I heard the sound again, that soft whisper, the Ariel one that had spoken to me from the book. But this time, it was not from the pages. It was from the mirror. I stood up slowly. My heart beat fast, but my feet moved on their own. I stood in front of the mirror. It glowed, red at first, then blue, then clear like glass. A new picture appeared. I saw myself as a child. I was crying. I was holding something. No, someone's hand. It was Elias. He was kneeling beside me. He looked sad. He touched my face. Then, in the image, I turned away. I let go of his hand. I ran to a corner. I covered my ears. I stopped speaking. The mirror shook. The picture faded. Then one word appeared. Forgive. My chest felt tight. My eyes burned. I sat down on the floor. I remembered now. That night, Elias had come to say goodbye, but I didn't want him to leave. I was only a small boy. I didn't understand why he was going. I thought he had stopped loving me, and in my pain, I locked my voice away. I stopped speaking. I stopped trusting. I stopped learning. The English words I had learned were buried deep inside me, and they stayed there for years, until I came back. I stood up again. I walked to the window. The sky was still dark, but inside me, something was breaking. Something old. Something cold. I opened the book one more time. The page was blank. I picked up a pen. I started writing in it. Dear Elias, I remember now. I was angry. I was hurt. But I see you were hurting too. I forgive you. And I forgive myself. As soon as I wrote the last word, the rose on the book's cover glowed bright red. The whole room filled with light. But it didn't burn. It felt like morning, like peace. I looked into the mirror again. My reflection smiled. A small, honest smile. It was the first time I had seen myself truly happy. Not because I had all the answers, but because I was no longer afraid of the questions. The book slowly closed by itself. The pages locked. The light faded. The room returned to normal. I stood in the middle of it all, quiet and calm. For the first time in my life, silence was not my enemy. It was my teacher. Is this the end of aerial silence, or the beginning of something even deeper? Share your thoughts below. Lesson 18. The Door That Waited. The morning sun came through the window. It touched my face gently. I sat on the bed, holding the book in my hands. It was closed now, completely silent. But it no longer felt like a mystery. It felt like a memory, a piece of me, a guide that had walked beside me through silence, through darkness, through learning. I looked around my room. Everything was the Arielle, the desk, the notebook, the small mirror. But inside me, everything had changed. I was no longer afraid of who I had been. I was no longer lost in silence. I had found my voice, word by word, page by page. And now I knew there was one more step, one more door, one more truth. I went downstairs. Clara was sitting near the fire. She looked up and saw me. This time I smiled at her, and she smiled back. But this smile felt different. It was not the smile of a stranger. It was quiet, warm, and full of understanding. I sat beside her. I placed the book on the table. She placed her hand on it gently. "You're ready," she said. I nodded. "There is a room," she said, "behind the garden wall. It was locked for many years. Thomas said only you could open it, when the time came." I listened carefully. My hands felt cold, but my heart was steady. "The time is now," I said. Clara stood up and handed me a small silver key. "He left this for you," she whispered. "It opens the last door." I walked to the garden slowly. The sky above was clear. The grass was wet with morning dew. The flowers stood tall. Birds sang softly in the trees. I reached the garden wall. There was a small wooden gate I had never seen before. It was hidden behind vines and leaves. I pulled the vines away and saw the lock. I placed the silver key inside. It turned easily. The gate opened with a quiet creak. Behind it was a small room made of stone. No windows, just one door. I stepped inside. It smelled like old paper, wood, and something else, like dreams that had been waiting too long. Inside the room was a single chair, a table, and on that table there was a letter with my name on it. I sat down and opened it. The writing was neat and strong. It was from Thomas. "Dear Ariel, I knew one day you would come back, not just to this house, but to yourself. I knew the day your voice left you was not the end. It was the beginning of something stronger. You were not broken. You were becoming. And the book was never magic. It was memory. Your memory. Your mind turned it into light. Your heart turned it into words. Now, speak without fear." Tears filled my eyes. I folded the letter and placed it in my notebook. I looked around the room once more. There were no more secrets, no more doors, no more mirrors, just me, and that was enough. I stepped back into the garden. I stood in the sun. The silence around me felt soft, like music without sound. I spoke to the sky, not loud, just clear. "My name is Ariel. I am not afraid to speak, not anymore." What did you feel reading Ariel's journey? Has he truly healed? Let us know your thoughts. Lesson 19. I can speak now. The days passed quietly after that morning. The house felt lighter. The air felt softer. I no longer looked at the walls with fear. I no longer waited for shadows in the mirror. The book stayed on my desk, closed, peaceful. It didn't glow anymore. It didn't whisper. But I didn't need it to. It had already done what it came to do. It helped me find something I lost long ago. Not just words, not just language. It helped me find myself. The boy who once forgot how to speak had found his voice again. And now I was ready to use it. I went to my English class that week. A small room filled with other learners, new faces, new hopes. The teacher asked us to stand up and introduce ourselves. The old me would have stayed quiet. My hands would have shaken. My heart would have raced. But now I stood up with calm in my chest. I looked at the room. I smiled. I said, "Hello, my name is Ariel. I'm from a small village. I came to London to learn English, but I also learned something more. I learned how to speak without fear." The class clapped. My teacher smiled, and I sat down with pride in my heart. Later that evening, I sat with Clara in the garden. The sun was setting. The flowers moved in the wind. She poured tea into 2 cups. We sat in silence, but this silence was beautiful, full of peace. She looked at me and said, "He would be proud of you." I nodded. I didn't need to ask who. I already knew. Thomas. And maybe even Elias. I held the cup in my hand and looked up at the sky. "Thank you," I whispered. Not to anyone I could see, but to everyone who helped me, those who stayed, those who left, and those who waited in silence for me to remember. That night, I wrote in my notebook again. But this time, not to find answers. Just to speak. Just to enjoy the beauty of language. "Dear future me," I wrote. "Don't ever stop speaking. Don't be afraid of wrong words. Don't wait for perfect grammar. Speak because your voice is yours. And that is enough." I closed the notebook and placed it beside the book. Both were full now, full of memories, full of mistakes, full of growth. I smiled. I turned off the light, and I slept with peace in my heart. I came to London thinking it was a city of lessons, but I learned it was also a city of healing, of truth, of finding lost things. I used to think learning English was about big words, long sentences, fancy sounds, but now I know it starts with courage. It starts with a single word spoken with a full heart. My first word was fear, but my last word is freedom. And that is how my journey ends. Or maybe this is where it truly begins. What was your favorite moment in Ariel's journey? Share in the comments and let this story inspire your own voice.